The people of Sri Lanka are hungry and angry. With only $2 billion in foreign reserves and $4 billion of debt to be repaid in 2022, $1 billion of bond maturing in another 3 months, that is July, Sri Lanka is in a mess right now. I will try my level best to avoid a political discussion in this video, but you all will understand that economics and politics are two sides of the same coin, so it is very difficult to keep it separate. Let me first try and explain what is going wrong or what went wrong for Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka is a classical case of twin deficits. So it has a fiscal deficit and it has a current account or a trade deficit. So the fiscal deficit is where the government spends more compared to the taxes it earns. And the trade deficit is where the country imports more than it exports. So let's first discuss the fiscal deficit. So the government in Sri Lanka has been borrowing extensively to finance these deficits, and most of its borrowing comes from countries like China and India. Now, borrowing is not new to Asian countries. Every other Asian country borrows money. However, what could be different between a lot of these countries is the way they invest these borrowings. Countries can invest these borrowings into assets which can make them more money in return and allow them to repay the debt. So that is called your capex or capital expenditure. However, in case of Sri Lanka, most of these expenditures were towards revenue expenditures, which means a lot of the money which was being borrowed by the Sri Lankan government was going out in the form of salaries or maybe even corruption. When we look at the trade deficit, Sri Lanka's main export is tourism, but it's a net importer of oil. With oil prices high and tourism being affected due to COVID, Sri Lanka was badly hurt. So the timing of this crisis proves that countries cannot rely on one stream of income. With excessive debt to GDP ratio, with excessive reliance on tourism for its national income, Sri Lanka was exposing itself or its economy to too many dangers. Now, what is the political side to it? Like I said, now, I don't want to make this political, but economics and politics cannot be kept apart. The issue right now in Sri Lanka is you've got four brothers running the country, where one brother is the president, the other is prime minister, the third one is irrigation minister, and believe there's no enough food in the country. They're happening to import food from India, and the fourth brother runs the economy. The main issue is not the president, not the prime minister, and not even the irrigation minister. The issue is the finance ministry. You cannot have people who are this part of your family to be running your economy. You need economists to run your economy. There's a funny event from 1923 in Germany. It's funny now, it wasn't funny back then, that a lawyer or a legal expert was running the economy in 1923 in Germany, and when he was asked about hyperinflation, where price of bread was soaring and people in Germany could not afford to buy bread, he responded saying, "Oh, don't worry, we are going to print more money. And by printing more money, everybody's going to have enough cash and they can buy bread for themselves." Germany was printing so much money that it ran out of ink, and they had to print notes with only one side of the currency being printed, the other being left blank. So what lessons do we learn from Germany or the Lebanese crisis or what happened in Venezuela or what is happening in Sri Lanka right now, and perhaps other Asian countries, other countries in the region, they have to be very much concerned about this. One, if you go to IMF and you get a loan, then you need to reinvest that loan in a way which reduces your reliance on other forms of debt. Unfortunately, with Sri Lanka, it was only relying on China, followed by India. It should have gone to IMF perhaps last year. It kept delaying it, and now it is going to IMF, but the issue is the political instability. A lot of the ministers who were on the government side, they have moved to the opposition side, so there's no proper government functioning right now. And IMF avoids to deal with countries where there's no political stability. So the first thing Sri Lanka will have to do is to restore political stability and go to IMF. It will definitely negotiate with both China and India to renegotiate the terms of debt repayments. And it will need to reduce its reliance on perhaps on tourism and other commodities which it solely relies on for its income. But the immediate step will be to curb imports. And for this, the top class, the elite class of Sri Lankans will have to sacrifice. It's a tough thing to do, but they need to sacrifice. They will have to curb their spending habits. They'll have to scale down their lifestyle, their standard of living, so that the country immediately stops importing. Sri Lanka will have to correct its deficit, lower its deficit. It may continue to run deficits, but it will have to lower these deficits. So I hope this video gives you an idea of what is going on not only in Sri Lanka but many other Asian countries. Devaluing the currency will not help. In fact, it is going to make the deficits worse. If I go by textbook, devaluing the currency should make your exports competitive in the international market and your imports should become expensive. But what we need to understand here is that what Sri Lanka is importing are necessities such as oil and food, and what it exports to the world is mainly tourism and tea. So what it will export, for that it is going to get less money, and what it will still continue to import, it will have to supply more of its currency. So this is going to make its deficits worse. So the coming days are going to be tight and tough for the people of Sri Lanka, and I hope and pray in this holy month of Ramadan that Sri Lanka is able to overcome these challenges as soon as possible.